She is a digital marketing specialist who can spin the meanest website around.
And he's host of the TV show Buzz, which features nonprofit organizations receiving marketing makeovers.
Here on Buzz for Good, we talk all things nonprofit, the people they serve and the good they do.
And we talk to creative professionals and provide marketing tips and tools to help your nonprofit achieve more.
That's right.
Buzz!
Greetings and welcome to Buzz for Good, where we talk all things nonprofit, the people they serve and the good they do throughout Southwest Virginia. My name is Michael Hemphill. I'm the creator and host of this radio show and the TV show Buzz that airs on Blue Ridge PBS, where we feature nonprofit organizations receiving pro bono marketing makeovers from members of the American Advertising Federation of Roanoke. You can find out more about all of our episodes, both TV and radio, on our website, buzzforgood.com. That's buzz, B-U-Z-Z, 4 good.com, as well as our social media channels, all at Buzz for Good. That's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. January is National Blood Donor Month. So on today's show, we are talking with the American Red Cross of Southwest Virginia in hopes that you will be inspired to give a life with the gift of blood. We are also buzzing about the upcoming event celebrating the Christiansburg Institute on February the 7th, and we'll share with you why you should care about this incredibly important, yet still largely unknown piece of Southwest Virginia history. I invite you to tune in to Blue Ridge PBS this Wednesday, January the 18th at 7 p.m. to watch a new episode of Buzz featuring Boys and Girls Clubs of Southwest Virginia. Now that evening of January 18th, you can also join us at the Grandin Theater for a sneak peek preview of another new episode of Buzz, this one starring the arts programs at Roanoke City Public Schools. Now that episode will air on Blue Ridge PBS on January the 25th. More about all of this on our website, buzzforgood.com. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, that Partners in Financial Planning, a Southwest Virginia-based financial management firm, partnersinfinancialplanning.com, as well as the Roanoke Cultural Endowment, which seeks to provide a long-term funding solution for arts and cultural organizations in Roanoke. That's roanokeculturalendowment.org. We invite you or your company to be a sponsor of Buzz and just reach out to us through our website, buzzforgood.com. Now, to start off today's show, I have a confession. I am incredibly squeamish. You do not want me around when it comes to things that bleed. And yet I have O negative blood, meaning that I am a universal donor whose blood can pretty much be transfused into anyone. So this past week, I was once again at the American Red Cross in downtown Roanoke, donating the 53rd pint of my life. Now, I am not saying this to boast at all. All I'm saying is that if I can do this, you can too. And with January being National Blood Donor Month, it seemed fitting to invite to Buzz for Good the Executive Director of the American Red Cross of Southwest Virginia, Jackie Grant. All right, well, it's my pleasure to welcome Jackie Grant, Executive Director of the American Red Cross Southwest Chapter, to Buzz for Good. Jackie, hello.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, this is National Blood Donor Month, but I assume blood donations are needed year-round. But what makes January National Blood Donor Month?
Yeah, so it is a national event, and it kind of coincides with the fact that January is one of the most difficult times of the year to collect blood. And so this year, we are resolving to save a life. So we're encouraging people to make a New Year's resolution and become a blood donor. And National Blood Donor Month allows us at the Red Cross to thank our blood and platelet and plasma donors for really giving the gift of life.
That's lovely. I'm guessing that January is a slow time for blood donations, kind of like how nonprofits and all sectors find January to be a slow time, because a lot of people have felt the felt more generous, I guess, during the spirit of the holiday season, Thanksgiving and
Right.
this, and they want to go out and donate and give to nonprofits. And in January, though, the need is still there for the work that the American Red Cross is doing when it comes to blood donations.
Right. So in December, we were all involved in the holiday season. People weren't thinking of giving blood and aren't thinking now. They may have been visiting family or taking a well-needed vacation. And then we've had some really cold weather.
Yeah.
And honestly, when it's cold or snowy, either we're canceling a blood drive or people are just not comfortable getting out. And even sometimes when it rains, people don't want to drive in it to a drive. And then we're seeing that uptick in flu and COVID. And, that's also causing a problem with us nationally at the American Red Cross.
Yeah, we'll talk about the need, locally and nationally for blood. I mean, do you have some numbers that suggest, how much blood is needed each day?
The Red Cross has blood drives every single day in our region, and probably at least 30 or 40 blood drives between our chapters. So with that, we need to be collecting. Sometimes at one drive, we're collecting 30, sometimes we're collecting 100. But that blood is so important because it has to get to the hospital and to care and into patients that need it. And when we see an accident or an emergency on TV and people want to rush out and give blood, the blood that was already on the shelf is what saved those people. So we need to continue to stock the shelves every day.
Yeah. Is there a personal story that you like to tell about the need for blood donations? When you're out speaking with groups about, I mean, we hear about the numbers, and yes, I think abstractly we know that blood is needed. But I mean, is there a particular human story that really inspires you and inspires others when you tell the story?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of people, have a hesitation to give blood, and maybe it's because there's needles. I think that it hurts, but a lot of people don't realize there is a tremendous need. And when we think about it, the people that are needing blood are cancer patients, children with cancer that are needing transfusions pretty much weekly, sometimes daily, trauma patients. Those are the folks that are in automobile accidents or have some medical emergency. And then think of complications of women that are giving birth. And so those are the folks that are giving blood and that are needing our blood. And we want to have that blood on the shelves for folks. And I know when my dad was going through cancer treatment, he needed platelets, and that's another form of blood donation. So there's whole blood, there's platelets and plasma. And platelets are a little bit different than the whole blood process, but it's so important for burn victims and cancer patients to help their body rebuild those much needed blood cells in their body, and to help with just feeling better and feeling well. And they are needed all the time because they only have a shelf life of about 3 to 5 days. So if people are thinking about they've given blood before and they want to move on to the platelet donations, which is called apheresis, please research about that because we need platelets and plasma as well.
Excellent. All right. Once again, here on Buzz for Good, I'm joined by Jackie Grant, who is the executive director of the American Red Cross Southwest chapter, headquartered in Roanoke. And we are having a conversation with Jackie because January is National Blood Donor Month. I happened to go into the Red Cross yesterday to donate. I have O negative, which I believe makes me a universal donor. So anybody, for the most part, can receive my blood. So every 8 weeks, I begin getting the phone calls and reminders from Red Cross, hey, it's time to donate. But when I was in there, you had a nice board on the wall that outlined who we have helped this month with blood donations. And kind of going back to those personal stories, it really personalized it for me. So you had up there was a 71-year-old woman who was undergoing heart and lung transplant, and so needed blood. There was a 55-year-old woman who was undergoing emergency repair of a ruptured ventral hernia. There was a 28-year-old woman who was having some postpartum issues, 82-year-old woman who had suffered a brain injury due to a fall, and a 23-year-old man who had suffered multiple gunshot wounds. So just some examples of all the ways that we need blood every day in our hospital system to help people.
We absolutely do. And it's sad to hear that only 3% of the population in the US gives blood. And so, and that has to do with a lot of factors. There are, if somebody is interested in and haven't given blood before and they want to find out if they're eligible, because there may be some weight, height, age, medications, illnesses that affect their ability to give. But if they want to, we need those first-time donors, because as the population is aging and people who have made a commitment to give blood getting older, sometimes things happen in their health, their iron levels down, they develop high blood pressure. We're going to be phasing out of those regular donors that give every 56 days. And we need, again, those first-time donors, and sometimes needing those high school and college folks that are going to start making a commitment to life to be a regular donor.
Yeah. What's the minimum age that someone has to be to donate?
So somebody can give at 16 with parental permission, but at 17 they can give. And of course, there's some height and weight, since they're smaller teens. So all of that on our website, redcrossblood.org.
Okay. Sometime, I believe about a year ago, I went in there and I had my, at that time, 16-year-old daughter with me, and she was out of school that day. I was just kind of tagging along, and through a little bait and switch, I got her to donate for the first time. I was panicked about it, but the technician at your location in downtown Roanoke was just phenomenal, and just kind of talked her through it, and kept her engaged and laughing the whole time that needle was going into her arm. And she said she didn't hardly feel a thing. It was just an easy process, and it really made her want to continue going back and giving more and more, as years go by. So I was thrilled that she did that, but also that, your staff was so welcoming and warm to her to make it as painless an experience as possible.
Right. And I think about it in the sense that what's a few minutes of a little bit of discomfort? And sometimes it's only between a minute and then 6 to 10 minutes of blood donation to save up to 3 people with your blood donation.
Each pint can save up to 3 people?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's, it does not take long. Yesterday, I was in and out probably in about 30 minutes total, and I didn't even have an appointment. I know that's not what you recommend, but I just happened to catch them in between people and walked in, and, did the little paperwork, the questionnaire, to make sure that I was safe to give. I hadn't had any issues that would, make someone who receives my blood and put them at risk. And then, it was a quick process, and I'm hopeful that the donation helps, and I hope that everyone else who's listening to this will also feel inspired to give the gift of life, because it really is. It's something that we can all do. You mentioned that only 3% of the population does that. Do you have an estimate, though, of if everyone who could give does give, what that percentage of the population would be?
Gosh, I would have no idea to know that, but that would be a lot of people. We would not have to be doing stories about blood donation. We wouldn't have to be pleading and begging.
Yeah.
If we had that, definitely. But I would encourage people, if they are thinking about doing it, to download the American Red Cross Blood Donor app on their phone. It will make their donation go a lot quicker, because they can do a lot of that, the questionnaire on their phone prior to their donation. And then one of the benefits is that you get that mini physical every time you go in to donate, which is great too. Get your blood pressure and all the important things checked. But one really cool thing about the app is that you get to see, they'll tell you where the blood has gone and how, and not specifically who it helped, but maybe where it traveled. And that's just, you can kind of in your mind put a face. If it went to Carillion or if it went to North Carolina, it'll be there for you to see. And then you can track your donations and track your temperature and your weight and all the things that are important to monitor your health.
Yep. I've got the app on my phone. It shows that I have yesterday's donation was my 53rd pint. I remember I first gave back and had a high school drive long ago, and did that. And I can go through the app and I could see that my most recent one went to Carillion, Roanoke Memorial Hospital, when it says you've helped save more than one life. I don't have any of the specifics there, but then the previous one went to Lewis Gale in Salem.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So what's that?
So yeah, so that's an incentive to see that and to feel good. But if they need another push of an incentive, if somebody gives in January, you have an opportunity to be put into a drawing to win 2 tickets to the Super Bowl, the 57th Super Bowl in Arizona. So the Red Cross always has sometimes little incentive gifts. This past December, we had the coveted long sleeve t-shirts. We've had Amazon gift cards. So check on the website, again, redcrossblood.org, and there can be a little giveaway sometimes that we have.
Wonderful. Well, one more time, joined here on Buzz for Good by Jackie Grant, the Executive Director of the American Red Cross Southwest Chapter, and we are in the middle of National Blood Donor Month. Jackie, any other parting encouragements or comments about the need that you're trying to fulfill each day with blood donations?
Well, I would just encourage anybody who's feeling healthy right now to go to redcrossblood.org, and in the corner on their screen, if they're on a computer, you can enter in your zip code and drives will appear. There may be a drive right down the street from your home or from your work, and you can look and make an appointment. You can give it a try. It's about saving a life. And so I think that is one of the most important things. You may not be able to give money, you may not be able to volunteer, but if you can give blood, you've helped somebody and up to 3 people. Yep.
Well, Jackie, thank you so much again for all that you and the American Red Cross do in so many areas of life, but especially when it comes to making sure that our blood supply is where it needs to be so that we are able to help people in need and some pretty serious crises in their lives. So thanks so much. And I hope that you see wonderful success here in National Blood Donor Month here in January.
Thank you so much.
And thanks so much again for listening today to Buzz for Good. Visit us on our website, buzzforgood.com. That's buzz, B-U-Z-Z, 4, good.com, as well as our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube, all at Buzz for Good. One more time, I hope that you will join me in donating blood during January's National Blood Donor Month. Contact the Red Cross to schedule your appointment. I also hope you will join me again this Wednesday, January the 18th at the Grandin Theater for a sneak peek preview of our newest episode of Buzz, starring Arts and Opportunity at the Roanoke City Public Schools. And then just a week into February, I invite you to join me again at the Grandin Theater to celebrate the Christiansburg Institute. What is the Christiansburg Institute, you might ask? It was the subject of a special 2-part episode of Buzz that we produced and aired on Blue Ridge PBS in August of 2021. It was founded in 1866 as one of the very first schools for recently freed slaves in Virginia, and over its 100-year history of operation, educated thousands of young Black Americans in its 185-acre campus. Booker T. Washington was its superintendent for about 20 years. An incredible piece of history that closed down in 1966 after schools were finally integrated. Of course, integration for them meant that Christiansburg Institute was closed and all of its students were scattered amongst all the previously whites-only schools. The Christiansburg Institute is still in existence as a nonprofit organization which seeks to promote racial reconciliation and understanding throughout Southwest Virginia. And on February the 7th, we are partnering up with Christiansburg Institute to show our episode at the Grandin Theater, followed by a panel discussion by the good folks at the Christiansburg Institute. And you can find out more about this event at christiansburginstitute.com. Now, I'm going to start off this segment with an extended audio clip from part 1 of our episode, and I will follow that up with a conversation that I had this week with Christiansburg Institute Development Director Andre Hash. William Faulkner famously wrote, "The past is never dead. It's not even the past." And nowhere is that truer than the Christiansburg Institute, once a school and now a nonprofit that defines the struggle and self-determination for African Americans. And for all Americans, hope. Theirs is the story that we are honored to share in this special 2-part episode of Buzz. For 100 years, the Christiansburg Institute stood as one of the finest schools for Black Americans in Virginia. Founded in 1866, just 1 year after the Civil War put an end to slavery, Christiansburg Institute became a testament to African American self-preservation during a time when emancipation was still more aspirational than actual. On its sprawling 185-acre campus of 15 academic buildings, dormitories, and other facilities, Christiansburg Institute educated thousands of students from across Virginia and around the country. Future doctors, lawyers, teachers, barbers, bricklayers, farmers, business owners, and preachers. Education giants such as Booker T. Washington served as supervisor. But in 1966, school integration finally took hold in Virginia, and Christiansburg Institute's legacy was quite literally whitewashed away. Its academic buildings were shuttered. Its students scattered to previously whites-only schools. Its land subdivided and sold off. Today, all that's left is one abandoned building on 4 acres. But there's a group of passionate people, school alumni, alumni descendants, along with a new generation of leaders, dedicated to preserving its history and ensuring Christiansburg Institute's present and future are just as impactful as its past. In 1866, Charles S. Schaefer, a Union officer originally from Pennsylvania, was sent by the U.S. War Department to Christiansburg, Virginia, to organize services for all newly freed slaves in the New River Valley. Working with Quakers from up north and the Freedmen's Bureau, Captain Schaefer in 1866 first rented a house and turned it into a school for 12 former slaves. Within the next 2 years, he secured a tract of land on what he dubbed Zion Hill. There, a church was built that took his name, along with a new school building which became known as the Hill School, where now more than 200 former slaves were being educated.
So when CI was founded, it was not called Christiansburg Institute. It was called Christiansburg Schoolhouse No. 1. And then within the next 15 to 20 years, we see the Christiansburg Institute name attached to the school. But that name then shifts right when the Freedmen's Bureau, right, which was abolished shortly after the Civil War. It was charged with, land acquisition, representation for African Americans in the legal system locally here in Montgomery County. When that happened, CI lost federal dollars, right? The Department of War was no longer supporting the school. This is where we see the entry of Booker T. Washington. There's a Quaker group in the North who acquires the deed to the buildings and the land of the school, and they hire Booker T. Washington as his supervisor, overseeing CI. When Booker T. gets involved, the name changes to Christiansburg Industrial Institute. So the school began with a very strong religious background and a classical education, mathematics, English, science. When the school grows to an expanded campus in 1895, its name changes to Christiansburg Industrial Institute. Booker T remodels the school literally directly after Tuskegee Institute, right? And he appoints his top graduates, class of 1895, from Tuskegee to come to Christiansburg and remodel, develop the school, grow it to become, again, that 185-acre campus.
CI is very unique because they gained control of their own institution. And so they were able to figure out what education looked like for them. And initially it was generally a liberal arts style education, or what some people consider to be a classical style education. And then as Booker T. Washington stepped in to figure out what would be best for CI, it moved toward industrial-based education, an opportunity for the community to practice vocational trades and become self-sufficient.
CI was the only high school that was educating black folks for a very, very long time. And there's, of course, reasons why. We know those reasons why. And so we had students coming from North Carolina, from Tennessee, in addition to from across the state. Now we know CI later in its life was a boarding school, so students could live on campus and then go to their classes, which would have been in 15 different buildings, in addition to taking buses daily from Pulaski, from Wake Forest, from City of Radford, even from Roanoke.
To assist in the transformation of the school into one focused as much on vocational instruction as classical education, Booker T. Washington in 1896 brought 3 of his newest graduates from the Tuskegee Institute. Charles Marshall, who was tapped as school principal. His friend, Edgar A. Long, who took over after Marshall's untimely death in 1906. And Anna Patterson, who would become Edgar Long's wife and principal after his death in 1924.
So we view Edgar Long as a master organizer who was able to talk to multiple audiences and then also make sure that the education of black people in the South was being centered and being met. In addition to Edgar Long, the building that remains and stands in his name, this is one of the last remnants from CI's 100-year life. We know that there were up to 15 buildings that were at the school. Of those 15, Edgar Long Building is the only one named after an African American. So his legacy as a statewide educator, which he was active across the state, teaching not just students, but training other educators as well who were coming to CI, staying on campus, and working with Edgar Long to promote CI and do other examples of CI across the South here in Montgomery County, Southwest Virginia, and across the state.
What is the way forward? How can education be used to solve the problems that we were facing at that time, and how can it help us to achieve our vision for the future? And I think when we see a lot of the commitment that is still there, it ties back to that self-determination. The ability to define oneself, the ability to think about a collective vision for the future and figure out how to get there ourselves.
Christiansburg Institute's self-determination extended far beyond education. While Edgar A. Long held a statewide reputation as an educator, he also brought his tremendous community organizing powers to meet other needs of Black Americans.
So we know that Charles Marshall died of acute appendicitis, which we know is a preventable disease. Because he could not be serviced locally, overnight his appendicitis became acute. There was a train that could have taken him to the only Black hospital in Roanoke, but that train had left. And so in that time period is when his appendicitis became worse and eventually took his life. So Edgar Long, in partnership with the local community, both Black and white, right, and northern funding coming from the Quaker group, they built the Christiansburg Colored Hospital. This was a state-of-the-art facility right here in Christiansburg that was serving black folks. It was also an interracial staff. This literally came from like the spirit and raw energy and power of Edgar Long wanting to meet a real community need, a real material need in the now, as a direct response to an injustice, a loss of a friend that didn't need to happen. And so when we talk about the school, we talk about the farm, we talk about all the learning, we also talk about CI was meeting a need beyond just the learning and the academic, right? This was a hospital, this was a community that was feeding and caring for black people from across the state.
In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its famous Brown versus Board of Education ruling that declared segregated schools were unconstitutional. But it wasn't for another 12 years before public schools in Southwest Virginia fully integrated, marking the end of Christiansburg Institute's century of service to Black Americans.
So we know the school closed in 1966. The Friends Freedmen Association approached the Montgomery County Public School Board in 1934 to deed the land and the buildings to the school board with the one condition that the land itself would be used in the perpetuity for the advancement of the Negro race. The school board was not okay with that one condition. They entered into a 10-year lease agreement, 1934 to 1946. Fast forward, 1946, the school board acquires all the land and all the buildings, the deeds themselves. They organize a board of control with representation from City of Radford, Floyd, Pulaski, and Montgomery County, all white administrators who are now overseeing and operating the school. Fast forward to 1966, the land is divided into 16 lots. 15 of those lots are sold publicly at auction, and the 16th lot is where the Montgomery County Public School Board builds the new Christiansburg High School, okay? So 15 of those lots today represent a Waffle House, the Christiansburg Rec Center, an entire Vista Via townhome development, the Oak Tree residential development. All of that formerly was CI's sacred ancestral land that made up that nearly 185-acre campus, which today has been profoundly developed and reduced to 4.4 acres of original campus property owned by the Christiansburg Institute Alumni Association and the historic Edgar A. Long building.
It takes a lot of resources, and if you don't have the overall community investment, then it doesn't happen. So that is a huge struggle for trying to preserve buildings like CI. And too often what ends up happening is that underrepresented communities like the African American community here in the New River Valley ends up having to try so hard to get the majority community to see the value in something that's important to us. And if they can't connect to it, if they don't see that value, then it's easy for them to dismiss the whole community and say, no, we're not going to pursue this. We have other things that we want to do with those funds or other things that we think are more important. And so then CI would be left behind. And it's such an unfair situation, right? It's not a situation that we created, yet we are in many ways having to suffer and really, really push for somebody to care. And we just shouldn't have to do that.
So there's legislative reasons that we know why CI closed. I think to put it just truthfully and simply, I just don't think people cared. I just think there was a lack of value, a lack of appreciation for Black culture and Black life and Black history and the achievements of Black people that have been happening for a full century. Right here, we're largely ignored. And today, we still continue to fight and challenge that narrative. So the inequity is very clear. If anyone wants to come to us and say, what is the longest lasting physical indication of slavery in Jim Crow South and racism, it is the under-preservation and under-resourcing of Black history, period. People need to be asking Black people, what do you need and how can we support that? And I think what's really key there is most often we find people who want to lead alongside us. But in this work, we believe that those who are closest to the issues tend to know the solution, right? Those who are most directly affected. So what we need people to do is, oh man, Black Lives Matter, anti-racism, what do we do? This legacy of Jim Crow and slavery. Well, I work with folks who lived during Jim Crow, and those folks still have dreams and desires and aspirations, right? And my generation too, we have dreams and desires and aspirations. So I think people need to look locally, look grassroots, and go, okay, where are Black people moving in Montgomery County, and what needs are they articulating? And have I asked? Or have I just assumed to know, right? I think that's extremely, extremely important right now. The best thing any advocate and ally can do, right, is to redirect resources to Black-led movements, right? And we don't need the leadership. We need the resources and for you to trust our leadership, because we have the leaders, man. You know, we have the leaders, man. These are people who are deeply, deeply invested in this community. Long before people were talking about anti-racism and talking about Christiansburg Institute, the elders have been here doing that, right? So I think there's like a sense of like duty. I think there's a sense of a commitment to honoring those who came before us, and then challenging these systems that prevented us from growing in the past, which are still active today, so we can make sure we don't repeat those same mistakes, right? And we can build together, and we actually can envision a real, actual, better Montgomery County that does meaningfully preserve and respect and affirm all of its history, not just the Confederacy and not just the one side of the Civil War we often are told, right? And CI is in that narrative. CI is a 100-year model of Black life. It is state history, right? We need the people to understand that and to come behind that and start saying that with us, right? That is where we see people power in grassroots organizing.
I think maybe historian Dr. John Henry Clark said it best. He said, history is a clock that's used to tell a people's political and cultural time of day. It's a compass that connects us on the world map of human geography. It doesn't just tell us where we have been, it tells us where we still have to go. It tells us who we still have to be. And that's the significance of CI. There is still such a strong community connection because what was accomplished there has definite impact on where we go in the future, right? The things that were taught, the values that come out of that history, the huge push for some level of control over how we learn and how we use what we learn is something that we're still fighting for and still trying to bring forward. And so it serves as a model, right? We can look at this institution and say, here is where it was done, right? We don't have to imagine, we don't have to think, can it be done? Yes, it happened. And those lessons are important for us to teach our children. It's important for us to teach the future generations so they can see, here is an example of how our community, against all odds, are able to be successful. And that's so important for us.
The first thing that we want to see happen is the equitable restoration, the full, entire capital preservation of the Edgar A. Long building. That is a top priority for our organization, but it doesn't end there. Once we preserve the building, we want to adaptively reuse the space. And we see the Long building serving a similar role it served at CI when it was an active school, but today in the community. So we know we want to house an intergenerational learning center, a music recording studio. We have cultural arts incubation space. We're looking into some collaborative nonprofit office space for rent inside the building. But more importantly, we want to house our museum and archival collections, which represents the 100-year history of CI in the building, properly cared for, preserved in a historic building named after Edgar Long. Now, the building, though, as we know, is situated on 4.4 acres of original property, so we will be developing the land and the site, and the goal there is for it to serve as a regional destination for African American cultural heritage tourism, recreation, and entertainment on that 4.4 acres of open green space right here in Montgomery County.
So we just left Christiansburg Institute over there, and Chris Sanchez said, hey, you got time to check out one other location. So we are following him now into this subdivision with these fairly new homes. I've got no idea where we are going or what we're going to see, but I'm kind of curious to find out. Right, so we're in this subdivision, surrounded by some fairly kind of new looking homes built in the last 20, 25 years.
That's right. We know that when CI was auctioned at public sale in 1966, a vast majority of the property turned into a residential development, right? And it built around the campus. And so the CI Principal Cemetery is the resting place of Edgar and Anna Long, Charles Marshall's infant child, in addition to other faculty and staff at CI.
All right, so you're telling me that these giants in CI's history are buried here in some guy's backyard that you've got to basically walk up his driveway to access?
That's right. When the land was developed, of course, the cemetery became increasingly isolated, and in its isolation, decontextualized. You would drive through this neighborhood and you would have no idea that 3 top graduates of Tuskegee Institute, appointed by Booker T. Washington, who committed the majority of their lives to this work, are buried, right here in Christiansburg. And so a big part of our work is making sure that these names, the names of Edgar and Anna Long and of Charles Marshall, in addition to Booker T. Washington, are celebrated. And I gotta say, standing next to Edgar Long, having just been in the bowels of the Edgar Long building, we are just continuously recommitted to doing that work.
This is sacred space.
This is sacred space.
All right, Andre Hash, Development Director of the Christiansburg Institute. Welcome to Buzz for Good.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, as I've shared with our audience here, really one of the highlights of 2021 for me and Buzz for Good was the 2-part episode that we produced and aired on Blue Ridge PBS in August of 21, featuring the Christiansburg Institute. And why we needed 2 parts to do that is because we're dealing with an organization that was founded in 1866. So we had 155 years to cover, and we needed more time than just our typical 30-minute shows. We had to give it an hour, but it was such an amazing experience. And we're going to rebroadcast that or show that on February 7th at the Grandin Theater as part of an event that we're co-hosting with you guys. But let's start off, though, by what has been going on at Christiansburg Institute since August of 21 when we last covered you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a lot. Namely, I've joined the team. Yep. Our staff has grown since that time. So we went from having just 2 staff members when the episode originally aired to having a staff of 9 who currently work in the areas of development. We have a museum, an archives team, and also a learning and action center. So our team has grown a lot over the past year and a half. We've also had, in addition to our programs and capacity for digitization of artifacts. So we've been able to secure several grants and awards to be able to successfully program some of the things that Christiansburg Institute has always wanted to do or has building towards. And, thankfully, we have a team now to be able to steward that implementation. So we've got new programs and new staff, and we're really excited to see what happens next this year.
Yeah. Well, when we were doing the episode, a lot of it had to do with seeking to preserve the last remaining structure of the original Christiansburg Institute. So just as a reminder, the Christiansburg Institute, founded in 1866, is one of the first schools for recently freed slaves in Virginia. And Booker T. Washington was the superintendent for many years. At one time, it sprawled over a 185-acre campus with 15 plus academic buildings, dormitories, on and on and on. And after the schools were integrated in 1966, which really integration meant we're going to close down Christiansburg Institute and have all the Black students there have to be integrated into the previously whites-only schools. The powers that be ended up selling almost all of that 185 acres down to just 4 acres And all the buildings that were on those properties are all gone except for one remaining building, the Edgar Long building. And you guys were working hard to try to preserve that building and revitalize it into a new kind of community facility. That seemed to be the primary focus way back in the day. But now you're doing a whole lot more. So
absolutely.
Yeah. But where do things stand with the preservation of the Long building?
Yeah, so a core part of our work at Christiansburg Institute is the preservation of history. I mentioned our staff who are dedicated to that, as well as education and empowerment, mentioning those programs, and ultimately the restoration and preservation of that building you just referred to, the Edgar A. Long building in Christiansburg. And where we're at today is I think the last time the episode aired, we had just restored the historic roof profile on the building. So we're looking to move forward in construction planning. We're excited about several potential projects we might have underway regarding that. We've got board involvement on a building team that we're excited for their involvement in the stewardship and next steps through our master site plan. And really, we're excited to engage our community. And that's a lot of what we're hoping to talk about with constituents in Roanoke with our February 7th event is how to meaningfully engage with the nonprofit dedicated to preserving that legacy of Christiansburg Institute. So we're really excited to roll out a membership program where folks can actually become a member to Christiansburg Institute. And so we'll share in more detail what that looks like in the days and weeks to come, but excited again to announce that with our folks on February 7th.
Outstanding. Yeah. For those who want to find out more information right now about Christiansburg Institute, go to their website, christiansburginstitute.com or org. I forgot.
It's .com actually.
.com. Yeah, christiansburginstitute.com to find out more about that. And I'm pleased to say that we helped make that website possible through our episode of Buzz. And you can take a look at that when you come to our encore presentation of our CI episode of Buzz. What can people look? Well, first of all, what was the kind of inspiration behind wanting to do this event in Roanoke on February the 7th at the Grandin Theater?
Yeah, so I joined staff again last year, and I know that there was a previous event at the Grandin that had received was received well by the community, and so we wanted to follow up with that with another meaningful engagement to speak to our updates as an organization and to more meaningfully make those connections between folks who have a connection to the legacy of Christiansburg Institute right here in Roanoke, recognizing that Christiansburg Institute wasn't an institute that only served folks in Christiansburg and Montgomery County, but across Southwest Virginia. So we're hopeful to connect
not only Southwest Virginia, but I mean, all up and down the East Coast. They had
absolutely
dorm facilities there. So, families from as far away as, New York would send their kids to CI back in
100%. Yeah. And so we know that this story again has national and international regard through those connections, and so we're excited to investigate that really locally in Roanoke with our friends and neighbors. So hope to build relationships with alumni, descendants of alumni and faculty from the school to connect those histories and preserve them more meaningfully with Christiansburg Institute.
Yeah. So February the 7th at the Grandin Theater, we're going to re-air our two-part episode of Buzz. And then also you're going to have some other agenda items.
Absolutely. So we're excited to bring a full program together for participants, really hoping to connect both the story and we want to allow for some networking, right? We recognize that relationships relationships can be facilitated well when we allow space for us just to come together over food. So for our event on February 7th, we're excited to bring a pop-up exhibit. The first part of the agenda includes a museum exhibit pop up there in the historic Grandin Theater. We're excited to curate their space with some of our artifacts and the pop-up exhibit. Well, that will be also followed by a catered meet and greet. We're excited to have the folks from Caribica Soul in Roanoke provide our food and our menu for the evening. So there will be a catered meet and greet along with that pop-up museum exhibit. That will be about the first 30 minutes of the event. Then we'll usher folks into the theater for the screening, where folks will get to see the two-part episode, followed by a panel discussion. And again, more information to come about Christiansburg Institute and how to connect with the nonprofit today.
Who are some of the people who are going to be on the panel?
Yeah, we're still hoping to narrow that down, actually. Okay. I hesitate to give out details until I hear more from elders in particular, who have to coordinate well in advance some of these things. So we're working to finalize that now. And
just so the audience knows, when you speak of elders, you're talking about alumni of Christiansburg Institute primarily.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have we're really proud about our alumni representation, both among our board and those who support our work. And we sit at the feet of our elders, really in terms of decision making and the visioning for the work that we do. And so it's really a privilege again to bring some of this to life alongside of folks who actually had the opportunity to participate in Christiansburg Institute as students.
Yeah. Yeah. And we interviewed several of these elders for our episode. And I remain so touched by their stories and by the emotion that they still feel deep in their hearts for Christiansburg Institute, even though, it's a space that has been closed now for 50 plus years. Still have people who if not graduated from there, attended there, or they had a parent who attended there, and they wish that they could have attended there had it still been available to them. So it's a wonderful story. Why should people, still care about the Christiansburg Institute? I'm talking about white people.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think I really appreciate that question, and that's one of the things. My role is to help people make that connection. What is my self-interest with this institute, with this legacy? And so I think just putting things in their proper context is the first thing. And we work as a team at Christiansburg Institute to make those connections, those historical through lines in between how forms of oppression like racism, sexism, classism have hurt us all, and how specifically we can tell those stories in relation to what happened at Christiansburg Institute and its 100-year history. And by making those meaningful connections about what happened in history, we can talk about some of the things that is happening today. So when we talk about education, we also talk about empowerment. Yep. It's one thing to know the truth. It's another thing to be empowered to act upon that awareness of the truth. So what we are working to do with our programs in coordination of community is to really invite folks into that storytelling, to understand the truth of the legacy of Christiansburg Institute. And once being moved by that truth, we want folks to be able to involve meaningfully in whether it's fundraising, programs and events, or however else they see fit within the nonprofit that's connected to that legacy. So I think each of us can find how we fit into that puzzle piece if we just look closely enough across history.
Thinking back on that episode, I, as a white guy from the South, I've always had in my mind this notion that desegregation and school integration was a good thing. And I say that, yes, it is a good thing, but the way it was implemented, especially in Southwest Virginia, was another atrocity, I would say, for Black Americans who were attending Christiansburg Institute, because all those alumni that we interviewed for that episode said that they received a superior education and felt more valued, more respected by their teachers, and were held to higher standards at the Christiansburg Institute than they were at, say, Christiansburg High School, where they were inevitably assumed that they, needed remedial help. And so we're
Right.
put in the lowest classes, and we're often viewed as, quote, troublemakers. And we're just not given a chance at all. And I can't help but wonder, and have you ever wondered this? I wonder, when we think of integration, desegregation, what if Christiansburg Institute had been the school that stayed open, and integration meant that the white kids from, say, Christiansburg High School had to go there?
Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate the sort of imagination prompt to allow that sort of wondering. I do wonder, Michael, what that would have been like. As we know, desegregation again was ultimately a it was mandated by law to desegregate without any meaningful support or mandates to integrate student populations. So I think that we are still left with those effects today in public education. But to your question about what would it be like today if all those years ago during desegregation, the school would have actually been Christiansburg Institute. And I think one of the things that comes to mind is that academic rigor and sense of community, and I guess sacred regard for human life, recognizing we come from very similar places. Again, the first high school in Southwest Virginia to educate the formerly enslaved. So with that comes so much perspective. With that comes I would say, an authenticity and approach. And I imagine that if students were to come to Christiansburg Institute in that time, would have been welcomed, but challenging their paradigm about how they hold each other, how they regard their education. It would be a really different perspective. So I think a part of me also sees that vision of how we carry out our work at Christiansburg Institute today. Our executive director, Chris Sanchez, reminds me often, Christiansburg Institute was a school, and it still is a school in terms of how we honor its legacy today. So that's a lot of that imagination. Why I appreciate that question so much is because that's some of what we're trying to build today, is that imagination. If this was still a school today, how would students feel when they showed up on campus, when they were greeted by an educator or received a meal? And so that's a really important question, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I would say, yes, it closed in 1966, but it is still a school in many respects, because I know I am learning, at its step and in its hallways, every time, just as far as informing me more about this country we live in, the discrimination, the prejudice, but also the striving for reconciliation that we should all be aspiring to here.
Absolutely.
It's an extraordinary place, and I encourage everyone, regardless of whether you want to be a member of Christiansburg Institute or whether you want to support it financially one day, just to come to the Grandin Theater on February the 7th and learn more about our region's history, because it is this. I don't think you can tell our region's history without knowing something about the Christiansburg Institute. So please come February 7th. For more information, go to christiansburginstitute.com. You're taking reservations, is that right? Or
yes, we'll have tickets, online tickets through Eventbrite. Again, you can access that through our website, christiansburginstitute.com.
It's free.
We are with a recommended donation. So those tickets will be on Eventbrite through our website.
Okay, great. Well, Andre Hash, Development Director of Christiansburg Institute, I look forward to seeing you again, my friend, on February 7th at the Grandin Theater. And thank you for all the work that you guys do to help just promote the true history of Southwest Virginia.
Absolutely, Michael. We really appreciate your partnership on supporting this work. Buzz has been a tremendous ally in getting the story out there, and we look forward to our collaboration.
Excellent. Thanks so much, my friend.
Take care.
All right. So one more time, please mark your calendars for February the 7th at the Grandin Theater for the Christiansburg Institute fundraiser. It will be a phenomenal experience that you do not want to miss. Also, speaking of the Grandin Theater, we want more time, hoping that you will join us this Wednesday, January the 18th, for a sneak peek watch party of our newest episode of Buzz, starring the arts programs at Roanoke City Public Schools. I hope that you will stay connected with us throughout the week by going to our website, buzzforgood.com, as well as our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube, all at Buzz for Good. Thank you for tuning in today to our radio show, and I hope that you will continue being a Buzz for Good throughout your community in the coming week. Take care.